Well, it's 9 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. We'll begin with a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a roll call, please.
Nicole Fickus.
Here.
Zach Rudak.
Here.
Bruce Delon.
Here.
Brian Pettican.
Here.
Robert Showers.
Here.
John Andrews.
Here.
And Brett Washington.
Any changes to the agenda? Any additions?
No, sir.
Entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Good moved and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's carried. Presentation of minutes, February 25th, 2025, Board of Commissioners meeting, March 20th, 2025, Human Resources meeting, closed session. I heard you had a,
Yeah, motion to approve with the following amendment for the state commissioner comments at the end of last board commissioners meeting. I'd like my comments to read that I acknowledge Moats Park as a popular destination and desire for bike safety to be considered as new route is constructed. And I wrote it down for Deb.
Thank you.
There you go.
anybody else? Do we have a motion with that adjustment?
So moved.
Would you like support?
Support.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion's carried. We have communications from Eagle Township Resolution adopting ordinance amending the interim zoning ordinance. Livingston County Resolution to support local control and claim appeal against MPSC. It's a pleasure of the board.
Move to place on record, Mr. Chair.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carried. Administration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I reported last Thursday at the Human Resources Committee, the Employee Health Alliance was scheduled to meet on Friday. They did result in making a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. There are several action items that will be required a little bit further in your agenda. I will wait until we get to that portion of the agenda, if it is the pleasure of the board to go into reviewing that recommendation. That's all I have. That's all I have, sir.
Public comment. We'll have public comment. As you approach, you'll need to turn the microphone on if you don't mind. Need your name and address for the record. Push the button. There you go.
My name is Bonnie Painter. I live in Ovid Township, Clinton County. And I came to two previous board meetings. And I wrote out what I wanted to say because I didn't expect to stay this morning. I really have to be someone else. Dear members of the Board of Commissioners, I have been to two previous board meetings, and I have one more thing to say regarding the special land use permit for Telecad Verizon proposed tower on section 36 of Ovid Township. Telecad Verizon knew exactly what they were doing. They checked all the boxes, they crossed every T, they dotted every I. They met all of the qualifications and all the criteria. Their attorneys were already in place long before anyone along Hollister Road knew anything about their plans. As someone on this board said last week, our hands are tied. It's approve it or go to litigation. So now it seems that the big corporations hold all the cards, and although it had to be approved by several different boards, none of you really had any say in the matter. Therefore, neither do your constituents. Our health concerns couldn't be considered. Our home values couldn't be considered. Our aesthetic concerns couldn't be considered. Perhaps it's past time for the qualifications and the criteria for these conglomerates to change to include the people who are most impacted by those rules. The ones who have to live next to it and look at it every day. The people who knew nothing about it until the qualifications were already all met and the work had begun. Because this will come before you again on the next road or in the next district or the next township, please consider changing those qualifications to include the legitimate concerns of your constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Melba Kelly, 3847 South Hollister Road, Ovid. Bonnie said everything pretty much is what I was gonna say today. The lawyers all lied to us or kept everything covered up for Verizon before it was too late. And like she said, they crossed every T and dotted every I. And all the boards that it has gone through, or whatever it is, kind of neglected us. I mean, we're the ones that elected you guys and put you in here, and I think you're turning your backs on us. I mean, I don't know why it couldn't have been put in the state park, because they even lied to that. They said that they had went and checked it out and it couldn't be on there. Why did a bunch of phone calls and talked to three different people from the park? None of them had anything that they didn't know about it. They said if there was something that was in writing or something, that it couldn't go there, they would like to know and like to see it, or whatever it is there. And I just think this whole system has let the people down.
Andrew?
Good morning. Andrew Wiswasser, elected supervisor of Victor Township. Before you guys this morning, you have a zoning variance proposal that was approved both by our township board and from Clinton County Planning Commission previously for Miss Vicky Grun, who resides on Hollister Road. She's requesting a variance in zoning regulations to help create a second house on her property to take care of her aging parents and their ailing health. The township received a request for review from Christina McEmber from Clinton County Planning and Zoning in February for review of this by the township board. This was put through at our March regular meeting. All the members of the board supported that. Ms. Grun spoke out at the meeting regarding what her plans were for this and advising it would, without this, it would decline her property values. It would make it hard to sell her property in the future with having a property or one parcel with two houses on it. Therefore, she'd requested a split to be able to have a separate parcel just for that house with her parents on it. And that was outside of what our regulations would normally allow. Our board passed a resolution to send a letter to Clinton County Planning and Zoning regarding that, supporting that in that process. They then passed that at their last planning and zoning meeting, and that's before you today. And I would encourage your support on that to help her in her days here of taking care of her ailing parents. This is not an attempt on her part to split lots off or make for financial benefit. It's simply to take care of her parents and have them close to her while they're in their golden years per se. So I would ask for your guys' support on that. And again, our board unanimously supported that at our March meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Jessica Chance-Smith. I am on 2212 DeWitt Road. I am a township resident of Bingham Township. I also own property in Greenbush. Last night, I spoke to the members of the Greenbush Township. I have attended a few meetings, and I'm concerned over the bike path comments. I know that they are going to widen DeWitt Road. I'm so excited. All the residents are so excited that DeWitt Road North is going to get redone. I know there's plans to widen from M21 to Kinley Road. Now there's discussion that Supervisor Thalen keeps pursuing about putting a bike path per se into Moats Park. I've talked to the residents, and none of them are happy. There's not a person that wants that bike path there. It is going to be a truck route. It is dangerous. I'm all for widening DeWitt Road. I can tell you from firsthand experience what truck routes look like when there's not a wide enough shoulder. Maple Rapids Road is a very good example where my husband went off and crashed a semi. There's no shoulder. So I'm all for the widening of DeWitt Road. In the comments from our county rep, Nicole, would like to see the county to secure $3 million to provide a safe bike path along this truck route. I'm not disagreeing that it should be wider, but I believe that there is best use of county funds. If you want to secure $3 million, why don't we think about securing $3 million for the county 4-H, for our kids, for our future? The impact that that could have if you built a facility, $3 million on a facility for the county fairgrounds. We are in the middle of Michigan. What kind of revenue could that bring in for our county, for our city? Not only the adults would need someplace to stay, the kids always forget something. They would support our local stores. They gotta have a place to dine. What kind of revenue could that bring in? So instead of focusing $3 million on a bike path, securing that funds, let's focus $3 million on a county 4-H grounds and put our kids first. Put our city first, put our county first, bring in revenue here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to make public comment?
Good morning. Dawn Lawless, Bingham Township. Just wanted you to be aware that ESA is gone because RWE has bought the Walker and Steel Road Solar Industrial Park in the country northeast of town, outside of city limits. I wanted to share with you an article I read at MLive that says how hundreds of clean energy projects are on hold to wait years to plug in, if they even plug in at all. This delay stems from the solar park that they want to hook up to the power grid, which is constantly being evaluated. It states DTE Energy had intended to place panels to harvest the sun rays in Huron County this fall, but has since delayed it into 2026. And it says it's questionable if it'll happen at all. The rush to steal taxpayer hard-earned dollars to give to a cause that only benefits a few has clogged the system of getting permission to plug into the grid. More than 1,600 energy projects, the Leon Share Solar, and other low-carbon installations are lined up to juice the regional grid, serving the Midwest and Central U.S. Some 240 are in Michigan, according to the link at Grid Database. Next to the Foster and Swift appeal, it's been heard that no ruling is going to take place until the fall of this year or even in the spring of 2026. Therefore, as a resident and who is to look at the solar out my living room window and pass it every day down my road, I'm asking that you commissioners continue to hold the ordinance in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like? Last call.
George Nicholson, 4593 South Meridian Road. Back on the tower, I figured it was pretty much cut and dry. If Mr. Ackles seems like he needs a tower, maybe he ought to put it in his front yard, and maybe he could move his shipping container that's there. I've dealt with him. I hope Verizon has a lot better luck with working with him. He's a lying backstabber. Thank you.
Last call for public comment. Okay, hearing none, we're gonna move on. Next item on the agenda. Resolution congratulating the DeWitt Community Singers. Mr. Hurricane, would you like to?
Sure. I received a email from the DeWitt Community Singers. They reached out because they will be celebrating their 25th year of providing the gift of choir music to our community. They also have an audition fee-free adult community choir where anybody who loves to sing or get involved is very open and welcomed into their group. And I would appreciate if the board would approve this resolution. They are holding their 25th anniversary on April 25th. It's a Friday. It's going to be at the DeWitt High School Auditorium where they will be performing.
Would you like to move that resolution?
And I so move.
I'll support it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion's carried. Phil, you're on.
Good morning, Commissioners. Welcome to you three new folks joining the board. I'm hoping the Drain Commissioner's annual report will be the highlight of your year, but probably won't be. I'm pleased to present my 2024 annual report this morning. I consider 2024 to be a successful year for our office as we completed significantly more maintenance work over the prior year. Our staff of 6 manages the operation, maintenance, and financial records of over 665 county drains and inter-county drains. The drainage network consists of nearly 1,100 miles of county drains. That includes about 795 miles of open ditches and 295 miles of enclosed tile drains and storm sewers. As part of that, the storm drains, tile drains includes over 5,300 manhole and catch basin structures. So it's a lot of infrastructure that we have to manage with our staff. Also, there's about 90 stormwater detention basins included with that. So I want to touch on a few other highlights from 2024. Maintenance of our existing drains continues to be, and it has always been our top priority. Last year, we cleaned 17.5 miles of open ditch. That's 23% more than the prior year. We sprayed about almost 60 miles of county drains. That's about 25% more than we did the prior year. So even with the challenges we faced last year, we were able to significantly increase the amount of work that we did complete. Expect to have similar numbers this year as well. As far as petition work, we worked on one petition project, the Summer Lane Drain in Watertown Township. We got that installed last fall, and we have site restoration work to be completed yet this spring. We received 2 petitions. One was an inter-county drain, the Bittinger Inter-County, up in Maple Rapids, Essex Township, and then it goes north into Gratiot County. We also received a petition on the William M. Smith Drain in Watertown Township, and we're working on getting a board of determination hearing scheduled for that drain. Assessing is a big part of our work. Our assessing season runs from April until September, when we turn our data over to the county treasurer. Last year, we levied about 1.15 million in drain assessments to 106 county drains. That's up from 96 districts that we assessed the prior year. That number includes 22 drainage districts that were carryovers from prior years, meaning multi-year assessments. So Partnerships are important to us because we wouldn't be able to do the work that we do without relationships and partnerships that we've developed with many local municipalities and other agencies on projects that benefit everyone. Last year, there were instances where county roads were closed due to failing road culverts. We worked with the road commission and local municipalities to get culverts replaced and roads opened back up as soon as possible. Last year, working with the road commission, we were able to open 3 roads that had been closed, some of them for quite some time. And we replaced a total of 5 crossings with the road commission. Another project with the road commission that may be upcoming is they received some grant funding for upgrades to Chandler Road south of State Road. That will involve replacement of a very large culvert over the Remy Chandler drain. As part of that, there's also a branch of that drain that runs along the east side of Chandler Road. So a couple of things are being considered there. One is possible enclosure of that drain, and another is possibly relocating the drain further away from the road for safety issues. We're currently working with MDOT to replace 2 crossings on M21 east of St. John's, the Shilters and Subs drain and the Sturgis drain. They have advanced us money to pay for associated engineering, and they will be paying for all of the construction costs when it comes to be that it's under construction. So not sure if that's going to be taking place yet this year or next year, but that will be upcoming. We also are supporting the efforts of the Clinton Conservation District. We've worked with them quite a lot over the years. This year we're assisting on their 319 grant of the Stony Creek. So any involvement that we have counts as in-kind match towards their grant requirements. Some other things of note, last year we were involved in reviews of 74 development projects. John Morrison in our office, he performs our development reviews for compliance with our stormwater standards and to make sure we're protecting downstream landowners from those projects. Last year we had a drain maintenance technician position open, but that's now been filled. Yesterday our new employee started, so he's very new, but we have high hopes for him to bring us. Well, I'm thankful that we're once again back up to full staff, so maybe we can get work done a little more efficiently this year. Seems like every legislative session, there's drain code amendments proposed. Last year, there were 3 passed through the House and the Senate, but only 1 was signed by the governor. That was House Bill 5100, which is now known as Public Act 337. What that one does is increases the annual spending limit that drain commissioners have from $5,000 per mile of drain to $10,000 a mile. And it also ties that to the rate of inflation. It's been about 20 years since the last amendment increased that spending limit, so I think it's kind of overdue. This will aid us in completing a lot of maintenance projects in 1 year rather than having to spread our work over multiple years. Unfortunately, we've had, a lot of situations where we've been called to accident scenes and whatnot by first responders and emergency management. I want to say that communication with those agencies has improved tremendously over the past couple of years. We were called to sites where where there may be impacts to county drains or environmental concerns. I kind of jokingly say that we offer an assist to the county sheriff's department sometimes because it seems like a lot of times recently, maybe a half dozen times in my memory now, that people attempting to flee the law enforcement officials end up crashing into county drains. And they work pretty good, as stop sticks, so. Another big project last year was Consumers Energy replaced about 11.2 miles of natural gas pipeline through Bath, Victor, and Ovid townships. We issued crossing permits for those crossings that affected about 12 county drains. Consumers covered all of the related costs. Intercounty drains, through agreement through the Intercounty Drainage Board, they wanted inspections by outside engineers, so that's, if you look on some of those drains, you'll see some engineering costs. That Consumers picked up all of the costs for those. This year, we are implementing a new field data collection system that'll work with our GIS. We met with a company a few weeks ago, so we've taken the initial steps on getting going on that. That'll aid us greatly in documenting our maintenance needs and inspections and make us far more efficient. It'll also allow us to generate basic maintenance plans and soil erosion plans from those inspections that we will pass on to contractors and guide them on their work. Also, the office staff will have quick access to any information that the field staff finds outside, because when they put it in the system, we'll have direct access to it right on our desktop computers. I do serve as the grant administrator for the Clinton County Remonumentation Program that began in 1993. So last year we completed 43 corners, which puts us at 82% complete now. There are 384 corners yet to complete, and we have 45 that will be done this year. Funding for this work comes through a portion of the cost of recording in the Register of Deeds office goes toward the remonumentation program. So that money, I believe, is forwarded to the state, and then they reallocate it out to the counties using a formula that they have. So honestly, it's probably too little to get work done efficiently, but we're doing the best we can. So that's about all I want to talk about. So I do want to thank the Board of Commissioners, the Road Commission staff, county staff all over, local units of government, county residents for your continued support. So with that, if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Questions for Phil?
I'm curious, what percentage of the water in the drains flows out of the county? And if there's value in keeping some of that water in the county?
Well, 100% of our water ends up in Lake Michigan. You know, it takes different routes, you know, some through the Maple River, some through directly to the Grand, and some through the Looking Glass. But as far as trying to keep water, I guess that's something, that's an interesting thought. I mean, I've always thought that, you know, I see farmers do a lot of tiling, and then they also do irrigation. So in my mind, can't there be a way to maybe preserve water when we get it, to use it to put on their fields, you know? Farmers know their jobs far better than I do, I know that. But you know, I know that when they tile land, it pays for itself pretty quickly. And, you know, from what I've heard from them, they can tell in their yields, the yields increase greatly. So also same can be said for irrigation. So, you know, if there's a way to preserve water that they can reuse, to me, that would be great. But, you know, quite often that involves giving up tillable land. So that's another thing I don't see farmers wanting to do a lot of. So.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion to accept and place on file the Drain Commissioner's report.
I'll second.
Been moved and supported.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Phil. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion's carried. We're on to the Health Alliance resolutions.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Beginning on page 85 of your packet is the information that I referred to previously. County's health insurance plan year begins May 1st. So in order to complete open enrollment process, we need to have a plan in place April. This year, we anticipated and did receive significant increases for our current health insurance program, projected at 25% increase, or approximately $800,000, which still contained a significant risk because our current program was fully self-funded for our pharmacy benefits. And as I'm sure you are aware, over the past 2 years, prescription and pharmacy costs have increased significantly. As a result of that projected increase, we explored other options, including a fully premium-based insured pharmacy benefit program with the same provider, which current provider is Blue Cross Blue Shield with a PPO program. That still had an increase of 18.2%. So we further explored other options, the possibility of fully self-insuring both medical and prescription benefits. Given the increases that were projected based both on claims and pharmacy benefits, those were determined to be cost prohibitive. We looked at other commercial providers, did not receive competitive or realistic proposals from other providers for a variety of reasons, both cost and network coverage. And in addition to that, with the board's approval, we recently retained Gallagher Benefit Services to help the county in this regard for our health benefits. We also explored the possibility of joining what is known as the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool to secure commercial insurance, Blue Cross Blue Shield, for our area. The West Michigan Health Insurance Pool is a public employer health insurance program. They pool together. There are over 260, I believe, public entities, school districts, townships, cities, and counties that participate in the pool to aggregate and reduce the share the risk in terms of the increases. The Health Alliance discussed several proposals received through the health insurance pool that were comparable to the current coverage, and is making a recommendation that the county join the health insurance pool and utilize the proposal that was for a 20-month guaranteed rate renewal. And that is due to the requirements within the pool. As I mentioned in my opening, we have a May 1st health insurance plan year, which is somewhat odd and off cycle. The pool only allows for July or January renewals. 20 months would get us to January 1st of 2027 with a guaranteed rate increase over those 20 months of 16.6%. It also does hedge against an increase that we would otherwise expect to receive from any other provider January 1st of 2026. Let me check out my notes here. As I mentioned, the coverage is comparable. It does also, based on the agreed upon procedures that have been in place going back as far as 2002, require changes and increases to the employee cost-sharing requirements that will go into effect on May 1st with the new plan year. I will stop there before I get into any of the required actions that I'm requesting, and stop and see if there are any questions from the commissioners.
Questions? Brian?
So John, So locking this in at a 20-month period versus going with another provider that would say offer a 12-month, we would lock in those rates, potentially insulating from any increases that would occur with a 12-month plan, correct?
That is correct.
And this will also put us on a more calendar year.
That is correct also, which will be consistent with many other employers who share insurance with our employee population, as well as put it on a similar timeline with the federal flexible spending account elections or health savings elections. I will note, just to add additional context to the increase for the 20-month proposal, they did also, the pool, and I say the pool, but it is, just to remind everyone that it remains Blue Cross Blue Shield commercial insurance. They'll have a Blue Cross Blue Shield card. It's not something unique or any, it won't have difficulty with finding providers. They did also provide a 14-month proposal, which would get us to a July increase. That was slightly less at 13.1% increase. However, for the, as I stated, the additional 3.5% increase, we're able to lock in an additional 6-month period and move to the January 1st renewal. So that was also under consideration, but even though it was a smaller increase, it still would have been subject to one more increase prior to the recommendation that is before you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
will we become members of the Alliance? Will we have a seat on whatever kind of board they have?
Yes, sir.
And tell me again, because of the grouping effect, our single policyholder status doesn't hold up as well as this multiple employer status?
That is correct, unfortunately. The increases relative to the single subscriber coverage were slightly greater percentage-wise than the both two-person and family coverage options.
And the increase with the Alliance is how much less than the one proposed to us as a single pair?
The recommendation results in a renewal of $255,000 less than would have been to maintain the current program.
And off the top of your head, who are some of the major participants in this pool?
There are several. It started originally with a group of 8 school districts, I believe, in Ottawa County, approximately 20 years ago, as I said. Within the county, St. John's Public Schools is a member of the pool. Clinton County RESA is also a member of the pool. Pewamo Westphalia Schools are a member of the pool. That's membership within the county. Also within the region, there are members in Eaton County and Ingham County. Ones that comes to mind in Eaton County are the City of Grand Ledge, as well as the Eaton County RESA. There are Newaygo County participates as a member of the pool. Allegan County. Those are the ones that initially come to mind. I have a complete list of membership that I can provide to the commissioners after the meeting if there's
Are
continued
Kent
interest.
or Ottawa or, not Allegan, is it Allegan County?
Allegan County is a member of the pool.
They are?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and Ottawa County, sir.
Appreciate that, thank you.
John?
How many people are in this group again?
For the county or for the pool membership?
Yeah.
Pool membership is, I believe it's 600, or excuse me, 260 approximately. I don't have an exact number in front of me. They currently insure over 22,000 public employees in the state. That's where the benefit of the rate or the risk sharing comes into effect with that volume.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Okay, as I mentioned, as a result of this recommendation, there are several actions that will be required. One would be to approve a resolution authorizing the county's membership in the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool. It does require a minimum 3-year commitment. However, the rate guarantee is for 20 months, so that's essentially covering the minimum participation requirement. Approving the recommendation of the Health Alliance to approve the coverage designated as Blue Cross Blue Shield PPO value 0-090, effective May 1st, which that is the plan designation is internal to the pool itself. Also, will require a resolution to adopt the annual exemption option as set forth in PA 152 of 2011, which is the publicly funded Health Insurance Contribution Act, and then also establish the monthly employee cost-sharing requirements for single, double, and family as indicated in the report, which these are monthly. For single, it would be $140 $54. Double is $267.58, and family is $323.24.
We'll start with the first one. I entertain a motion to approve the resolution authorizing public entity membership in the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool for a minimum 3-year period.
Make the motion.
I'll support that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion is carried. Next item is to approve the recommendation of the Health Alliance to approve coverage through the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool, identified as BCBSM PPO, value 0 through 090, effective May 1st, 2025, based on the 20-month guarantee rate proposal.
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion is carried. Next is to approve a resolution to adopt the annual exemption option set forth in PA 152, the public, oh, wow. Funded Health Insurance Contribution Act.
So moved. A second. Support.
Need a roll call?
Please.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Washington,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
Andrews,
Yes.
Huda,
Yes.
Bergman,
Yes.
Showers,
Yes.
and DeLong.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays, motion carried.
Next item is to establish the monthly employee cost sharing requirements effective May 1st, 2025, as follows. Single, $140.54, double, $267.58, family, $323.24.
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion's carried. Is that all we need on that?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Perfect. Planning and Zoning Department Annual Report. Hiding way in the back is Christina.
So based on the annual report, the numbers are slightly low based on, we didn't have capacity last year to run different things through the department. We had a high number of ordinance amendments, so that shows that. We've been comparing numbers of what we've done within the last 3 months with that annual report, and we found that we're about the same numbers that ended last year. So we're going to be seeing a trajectory upwards.
Anybody have any comments? I take it everybody reviewed the report. Any comments or questions? For Christina?
I have one question. For what you're seeing this year, does that track as far as the distribution amongst the townships? Are you seeing any more development in one particular area versus another?
So there was not a lot of data that was collected previously, so we've actually started collecting data on any inquiries we've gotten, and we're actually starting to see that kind of break out in the different townships. So anytime we get a phone call, someone comes into our office, we get an email, we put it into a spreadsheet based on the township and what they were looking at and why. And then we also track whether or not we received an application from them or not. For complaints, we haven't had many complaints yet, so we haven't put that together, but that's something that we're going to be doing down the line.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Christina, I'm looking for 2024, which would be our most recent. I'm looking at the chart. Apologize, I have my cell phone. I don't know why I can't get on this computer. I'm noting that for the entire year, there were 14 applications for all the 10 townships? Or excuse me, did that include Eagle at any point? No, I don't
I
see.
believe so, because I want to say Eagle left the county in the spring, April, May.
January of 24 or 25, can't remember. Anyway, I'm looking at, so amongst the 10 townships, excluding Eagle, which had a total of, let me find it here, 9, excuse me, it doesn't say. So,
Over the 5 years, Commissioner, the Eagle Township activity represented about 10% of the,
yeah, and they're gone now, okay. So as I read the, as I read the 5-year average, I don't see any growth whatsoever. To speak of, how about zoning applications? I'm looking, is that the second, bear with me, yeah, here it is, zoning board applications, we have,
So if I could speak.
2024 is a total of 8. Yeah. Okay, that's what I want, thank you for that, I just want to see that.
I do want to speak to that. So zoning applications, it's kind of a two-way definition. So in that report, it's only looking at special land use, site plans, variances, rezonings. So it's not looking at the zoning permits that are issued.
I understand
And we
that.
don't have that in our annual report because that was part of the building department
Sure.
at that time.
The comment has been made that the north of Clinton County is growing in monstrous ways. I don't see any to speak of that would make me concerned that the horde is coming from Lansing. Where I live, there is, of course, in DeWitt, it's constant, but we don't do DeWitt, so thank you.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion to accept, place on file.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Next item, zoning items.
Okay, so on the March 13th, 2025 Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission recommended approval to the board for the rezoning of Vicki Grun's property. She's doing 2 rezonings, one for 9.08 acres and one for 1 acre out of her total 10.08 acres. The 9.08 acre will go from general agricultural district to the agricultural to residential transition district. And the 1 acre parcel will go from the general agricultural district to the rural residential district. That was approved as a 6-0 vote, all in favor, none opposed. And there were no objections to that rezoning. The second case that came before the Planning Commission on that meeting was for the approval of a special land use petition with associated site plan to construct a new 250-foot self-supporting tower wireless communication facility. This application was approved with modifications by the Planning Commission. It had conditions for compliance with the rules and requirements of the Clinton County Drain Commission, Road Commission, and Building Department. The applicant would be required to provide an approved access permit for the Clinton County Road Commission as part of construction permitting and receive approval from the Clinton County Drain Commissioner prior to commencement of construction. Compliance would be maintained with the Clinton County zoning ordinance, and a surety bond in the amount of $50,000 shall be provided prior to the issuance of a construction permit for the facility to ensure it if the removal of the facility, if it's been abandoned or is no longer needed at the time of building permit. The tower is going to be built based on FCC and FAA regulations, and it does comply with all of the zoning ordinance requirements. We do have legal counsel and the applicant here, if you do have questions. Our department reached out to the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, and none of them monitor radiation or RF waves. We were directed to contact the Public Service Commission, Federal Trade Commission, and neither of those entities looked at waves.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank Supervisor Wisswasser. It's a time that I don't remember usually the township's executive coming to the board. Thank you for that. This is something been missing for the 24 years I've been here. Typically the case is if it's something uncomfortable, you can't find them. And we take the brunt of all the misinformation that the residents have. And as we witnessed today, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I'll buy you a coffee someday because you're the first one I've seen in a decade that would come here and say, we support this. Thank you for that.
Be a partnership.
Absolutely.
Mr. Hurtacamp?
Did you say the applicant is also here? Because, I mean, as sitting on the planning commission, we haven't heard from the applicant. I know there was a request to have the applicant, if they want to come up, that we'd like to ask a few questions as far as like movement of the cell phone tower to the proposed site that was discussed in the planning commission meeting.
Good morning. My name is Richard Russell. I'm an attorney with Williams, Rentner and Plunkett in Birmingham, Michigan. We represent Telecat Wireless and TAG Towers with respect to the proposed Verizon wireless facility to be constructed in Ovid Township. I have with me Amy Rodriguez. Amy Rodriguez is with the site acquisition firm that was tasked with locating a site within the FCC regulatory guidelines to provide for the gap in coverage that existed in this area in Ovid Township within, of course, Clinton County. So I'm happy to address any questions that are before the board this evening. We did appreciate 2 opportunities to appear before the Planning Commission to address their concerns and address their questions. On March 13th, we were able to proceed along to this board after having been approved for our special land use and site plan application. This is a wireless facility, of course. It's 250 feet. It provides for co-location opportunities. It's a Verizon-led endeavor, meaning that Verizon is the anchor, but the Sprints, the T-Mobiles, the AT&Ts, the Crickets, the other wireless carriers all have an opportunity to co-locate on the tower as is required by federal law. We did, after our initial application, move the tower significantly to the south and to the east on Mr. Ackles' farm. We did so at the request of not only just Mr. Ackles and considering some of the concerns of the area residents, but also to try to avoid any variances. So I concur with staff that we meet all the zoning regulations as it relates to the wireless facilities ordinances at issue here. The FCC heavily regulates this industry. That's the Federal Communications Commission. We act under statute, which is the Federal Telecommunications Act of 1996. The FCC there is the regulatory body. In order to maintain licensing, companies like Verizon have to fill the gaps in coverage so that there are no dropped calls and lack of wireless communication facilities for people to transmit, whether it be text messages or just be on the internet. And that, of course, services the general community. It's not just for the convenience of persons looking to have a casual conversation. It, of course, is for first responders and obviously police and fire and ambulance, school districts, public government, libraries, hospitals, elderly care. It's all dependent on the network that is created by Congress, authorized by Congress under the licensing requirements. So we feel that this submittal is in the only location available in the area where we could satisfy our need for a lease with the local property owner. We did look at alternative areas proceeding to making this application. We did move the tower significantly, as noted in our letter of March 10th, on the site to eliminate its setback variances and to provide some additional movement away and to provide more visual coverage. Of course, cell towers are not the most visually appealing items in our infrastructure, in our landscape, but they are infrastructure. It's as important these days as in many ways power and gas and water, because people can't function in many ways without connectivity to each other. And infrastructure is what we're proposing here today. It's private, but it's federally licensed. And we do comply with the FCC guidelines, of course, as it relates to radio frequency emissions. And we look forward to complying, of course, with all regulations that were noted in the Planning Commission's conditions regarding access to the roads and et cetera. So I can answer any questions that you have, but this is a gap that has to be filled. There's no coverage in the area.
Council, bear with me. This is our council, right? There's a lot of misinformation out there, and of course, I understand the feelings of having a cell tower next to your property ain't exactly the most pleasing situation. Beyond that, do we have any power at this board to say no? And if we did say no, will we get sued and lose? That's what I want to know.
The board's hands are somewhat tied under both the FCC rules as well as the county's own zoning ordinance. So under the Zoning Enabling Act, the county, if it has a special land use application that complies with the zoning ordinance, which my understanding in this case, the application does, the county is obligated to grant the permit. It can impose reasonable conditions under the Zoning Enabling Act, but that's not a basis to deny it. It's my understanding there had been many concerns at the Planning Commission level with respect to certain health-related issues that have been come up with respect to wireless communications towers. That's not something that the county at the local level can consider or regulate when considering whether to grant or deny the permit application. That's something that the FCC regulates and researches at the federal level. So that's not, the county is somewhat preempted from being able to deny an application based on that consideration. So in this situation, because the application otherwise complies with the county zoning ordinance and some of the concerns that have been brought up relate to issues that are regulated at the federal level, the county would be preempted from denying the application on those bases.
So that's a nice way of saying we'd lose.
It would be an uphill battle.
Okay.
To defend.
I just want everybody to be clear, it's like sometimes we take the brunt of like we're a bunch of morons and we don't know what we're doing. And we do know what we're doing, but I want the audience to hear that we could fight and do what we could do, but we're still gonna lose, whether we like it or don't like it.
I never like to give a definitive
I know you
answer,
don't.
sure, but it would be a difficult case to defend, depending on the bases on which the county were to deny the application.
I understand all the therefores and whereases and the dodges, I get all that. But point of it is, we don't have the power to say no to something that's controlled by the federal government.
Yes,
Okay, great.
to a certain extent, and in this case, the county's regulations as it relate to this
So
application have been
whether
complied
Bob
with.
Showers likes it or not, it doesn't matter. It's what the federal government essentially says we have to do.
For certain aspects of
Okay,
wireless
great.
communications.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, council.
Thank you.
So could you walk us through, because there was the conversation or the comparison to the county making changes to our solar ordinances with the Walker Farm development. So I guess, can you walk me through, is that a correct comparison to make? Like, there's a comparison that said, oh, we changed our ordinances on that development. Is that, I guess,
No, because wireless communication towers are a specific type of land use that are regulated at both the state and federal levels. And that's where the preemption comes from. So solar and wind and alternative energy projects have their own separate host of issues right now that we're working through. But certain land uses have protections under state and federal law and preempt local governments from regulating them in certain ways. Wireless communication towers being one of those types of land uses.
So does that, if, with that federal regulation in mind, is there room for the county to look at our ordinance moving forward?
Sure, absolutely. Again, and I haven't taken a deep dive to determine whether or not, it just may be that there is certain aspects of that ordinance that the county might wish to amend that it may be preempted from doing so. There's certain topics of regulation that the county really just can't touch at the local level. One of those being those health effects, cancer-related issues that have been brought up at the Planning Commission level. That is within the purview of the FCC to research and regulate.
I was just wondering, is there any wiggle room that we can push the tower out a little bit further, like a couple 100 feet or anything like that? Seems like whoever's putting it in, they've said that they couldn't or wouldn't do that.
I think that there had been some discussion of whether or not it could be sited on park property, and I don't know the nature of those discussions and but it was my understanding that that had been looked into and was not a feasible option, given the ownership of that property at the state level. But what the county is positioned right now is being asked to consider an application for a specific location, and it would not be reasonable to say it needs to be moved to a different location. You're being presented with an application for a specific site, and the county is obligated to consider the request where it's being proposed.
I have a question for the applicant. And I live near this area, and I appreciate that a tower's being considered to be placed in the area to close the coverage gap. But the purpose being to close the coverage gap, I just want to highlight that there's a special case here. This isn't the normal, when you normally put a cell phone somewhere, you've got just residential and farms and other things that are typical in Clinton County. And here we have Sleepy Hollow State Park, just to the west of where this is seeking to be placed. And that is one of the top 5 popular parks on the weekend as far as occupancy is concerned. And we've got 200,000 people coming through there a year. And in recent years, we have had a number of incidents that have led to loss of life. And so it was stated that the location of the tower from its original proposed location was significantly moved to the south and the east. And so I guess, my question is that, significantly moving that tower to the east, did that knowingly diminish coverage of Sleepy Hollow? Because it was noted in our previous meeting that the expected coverage will only cover part of Sleepy Hollow State Park with the proposed location. And a second piece of that would be, was the potential for bounce back between county towers, 911 dispatches evaluated in the proposed current location of the tower? Meaning, and you're probably familiar with the case where if you're close to the county line, and this happens a lot where we are, you call 911, and sometimes you'll get picked up by Shiawassee Dispatch, and sometimes you'll get picked up by Clinton, but you're in Clinton County. And when it comes to this particular area of Sleepy Hollow, time is of the essence. And so, I have those two questions for you.
I'm going to have Ms. Rodriguez address the question of the coverage area that we expect for Sleepy Hollow, because that's more of a technical question as it relates to the radio frequency mapping that goes on to identify locations where there is a gap in coverage.
Yep.
And then that will also address the question, I think, about the county border that you're asking. So those are questions that the radio frequency engineers at the Verizons or the T-Mobiles of the world study before identifying a location. And then I just wanted to clarify, I think it was part of your question. We did move I'm gonna give you the exact dimensions. When we moved the location of the tower, we moved it 208 feet, 148 feet closer to the south property line and 60 closer to the east. That was the change that eliminated the setback variance that we originally would have sought for this location. But my understanding is there is a significant portion of Sleepy Hollow that's addressed by the coverage issues that we're proposing here this evening, so.
Hi, good morning. I'm Amy Rodriguez with Telecad Wireless. And yeah, so the engineers at Verizon, they studied those areas where there are the drop calls. And if there were, loss of life incidences, they are, they look at all of that. And the way they position where we look for the towers is to get the best coverage and not create permanent gaps in coverage so that they can cover the best, the most area connecting to the existing towers. And I don't have the map right in front of me that shows exactly how much of Sleepy Hollow is covered. If I remember correctly, I believe there was a section to the west that is probably being looked at with connecting with another tower that maybe they're putting in or in a different jurisdiction or changing antennas, things like that, so that they can create that full coverage that is needed. And because if we go too far and create permanent gaps, we won't be able to ever fill that because of the way the antennas connect, and then you would lose coverage in certain areas. So they've identified the location where we're at as the best way to cover as much of that park as possible.
So when you look at the provided coverage map, the area that it is proposed to be located is good, and as you move to the west, it gets worse. And I guess my concern is that the west side of Sleepy Hollow State Park is the most desolate. On the east side is where you have the park ranger, you have all of the resources to be able to manage this stuff. And a lot of the accidents and the things where you have trouble getting to someone is on that west side. And was it studied how far you would have to move the tower to the west to be able to cover all of Sleepy Hollow and not, with the location it's in right now being listed as good, you theoretically would not be creating a gap on the east. Rather, the decision here today is leaving a gap, a known gap on the west. So I just didn't know if that was taken into account.
They do. One of the ways they know that they need coverage in an area is by the drop calls or people that are trying to connect with their phones and they're not able to get service. So they do look at that, and when we're given, I guess to give you a little background, when we're given a search area, they have us, we review zoning ordinances and what properties in the area will work. And then of the interested property owners, we work with them and we let the engineers determine if that property will work. So if we didn't have a property owner to the west, or, further west from where we are, we can't put in a tower because we have to have somebody that is willing to work with us. So they try to get the best coverage they can. And like I said, I'm not aware of all of the projects that are being worked on, so they may be working on something further to the west that would be, connecting to this tower that would fill in those coverage gaps. And I guess I can't give you a specific answer because we didn't have anybody further west that was interested in working with us, and I'm not aware of other projects because I'm not the only one that works on the Verizon project. So we just are trying to cover as much as we can so that in the event somebody does need to call 911, that they can get that service.
Was Sleepy Hollow approached specifically, and would that be an acceptable location?
If I can address that, we don't necessarily reach out to specifically Sleepy Hollow State Park. At the time, I believe, and I may get the company wrong, but I believe it was SBA Towers they have companies that manage the towers for the state. So we're not necessarily reaching out to the state park, we are reaching out to those management companies. And so it would have been a conversation with them, not necessarily contacting some, because there's not always somebody at the state park that can make those decisions.
Are there other questions? I don't want to dominate the time, sorry.
And can be done to reduce some of the unsightliness of the towers.
Well, as you know, with, like with a telephone pole or any, the consumer's towers, you can't conceal something that's going to be a couple hundred feet in the air. What we do is we put in landscaping or, slats in the fencing. We conceal that ground equipment as much as possible. So like on this location, the back of the tower it's up against an existing tree line. And then the rest of the perimeter will be landscaped so that you're not seeing the ground equipment. So, the ground facilities, yes, sorry. So, yeah, so that fencing is surrounded by landscaping.
I know you had mentioned Sleepy Hollow. In looking, and taking that in consideration, I know at the Planning Commission meeting, I was under the impression that Sleepy Hollow had been contacted, or the state, for a possible site location there. But even taking a step forward and looking at the prioritizing safety concerns is brought up by legal counsel and first responders, wouldn't it be a more feasible place to put this would be potentially on Sleepy Hollow, where you would have complete coverage, and then shoot that signal to where the proposed tower is currently located? That would still cover that gap, but also provide that coverage that's needed over at Sleepy Hollow. I'm just interested in your comments.
Yes, and as I just, we did contact that management company that handles the towers for the state, and they just were not interested. And as a general rule, the state doesn't want the towers on their park properties. So that is an issue that one of the first things we look at is there a state or county township property that we can go on? Because honestly, it's usually easier to get the approvals and to get everything taken care of that way. Since we didn't have the option in that area, we had to go to residents. We did contact it was either 7 or 9 properties along Hollister Road that met with the zoning ordinance that we could place a tower on, and Mr. Ackles was the only interested party.
What about any residential area or agricultural area around Sleepy Hollow that would still provide that coverage? Not necessarily township land but private landowner.
We did, that was part of the 7 to 9 people that those were all residents, because I don't believe there was any township property in that area.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I have one. Would it be possible to get the specific data showing how much of Sleepy Hollow would be covered and what the potential would be for dispatch bounce back, so that if this is approved, we would understand? Would it be possible to get the specific information, and could we potentially hold off on approving this until we understand what that would pose? As it is, you drop calls as you're coming to Sleepy Hollow from the west, so that we can make sure that the emergency services providers and the local people there understand.
I think I can answer that question. What I would suggest is, I'm certainly the radio frequency data could be provided to the county to show how much of Sleepy Hollow would be covered. The location, and that could be a condition of our approval this morning. Certainly, we could provide that. Moving the tower, though, has been examined for a number of months as it relates to any additional locations on Mr. Ackles' farm or any other locations in the area. So I don't want to give the misimpression that there would be another, we even looked at trying to move the tower even a little bit east on Mr. Ackles' property before the County Planning Commission, and it had a negative impact on the radio frequency coverage for the area. We have a gap that we have to fill under our FCC licensing requirements, and if we were to move it even a few hundred feet, which was what was proposed for us to study before the last Planning Commission meeting on March 13th, it has a negative impact on the radio frequency broadcast signal for the mile or so radius that it takes for us to honeycomb off the other towers in the area. So the data that would show how much of Sleepy Hollow is being covered, that's absolute, we could provide that to you, but I don't want to suggest that there are any other feasible locations that could fill this gap in the area. And Ms. Rodriguez has exhaustively gone through all of the different residential options, and my experience is that the state parks in this, there may be exceptions. I've never seen a state park be open to having cell towers on their land. Most of the time, the land is deed restricted and/or by policy of the state Parks Department. So what I've never in all of my experience been located on any sort of state park. We do on occasion go into county parks if there are not deed restrictions. We go into school districts all the time. We go into libraries, we go into hospitals, we go into public infrastructure all the time. But state parks have never been an option in my experience. So we could show how much of the covers, because I understand your concern about, but even moving it a couple of hundred feet, number one, would cause us to have to start over at least a year delay in our project on all the due diligence on it as it relates to this proposed location on Mr. Ackles' farm. We'd have to do a new lease with him, which he may not be amenable to because it lengthens his access drive. And then I don't know that it would have any positive impact on the park, but it would have a negative impact on our radio frequencies as it relates to the mile square radius or the mile circle radius. So I think, you know, what we've worked hard to do is in our two appearances for the Planning Commission was to try to show that we comply with the local ordinances, both the county ordinances and OVID and the wireless communication ordinances and facilities ordinances, and that we have done our best to try to fill as much of the gap as possible that's existing in this area that under the FCC requirements we have to fill.
From a documentation standpoint, it would be nice to have officially reached out to Sleepy Hollow and get that official, no, we don't want it here, and that's the last time. So.
One thing I do want to just, to address that question regarding potentially tabling the decision, I do also want to just make a note that part of the requirements under state and federal law with respect to approval of wireless communication towers does have a shot clock for how quickly the county must approve a special land use application, and it is 90 days from the date that the application is deemed administratively complete. So I believe, I'm not sure what that date was, but I just want to keep that in mind as well, that the county does have some restrictions in terms of timeline for when it needs to act on the application.
Do we have that date?
It would have been sometime in January for them to get onto that February meeting.
Okay.
I don't have the exact date now.
The revised application moving the site from its prior location where we needed variances, my letter notes November 20, 2024. So I think that was the official date, but if it was January, so.
I had to send it back because the application said it was in Franklin.
I understand. I'm sure I'm sure staff is accurate then in that regard.
I do just have a follow-up question, and just, what would you have done if the applicant, the landowner, said, no, I don't want this on my property?
Well, in this particular location, what we do is we just continue to look for sites that fill the gaps. And then we note, for Verizon would then make significant, notations to the fact that if the FCC ever made inquiries as to why there's dropped calls within this gap area, that a reasonable effort had been undertaken to fill that gap.
So there would have been other reasonable sites?
I'm not sure. We would have, as Amy said, was it 9 sites? 7 to 9, you
It
said?
was 7 to 9.
7 to 9 sites she explored there. See, what happens here is the FCC, if there are dropped calls, if there are lack of first responder access within certain areas. And the national carriers, the Verizons, the AT&Ts, don't fill those gaps. They get sued, and they get sued for those locations. If they can show that they made reasonable efforts within those locations to identify sites and they couldn't find them, that's a defense for them in that administrative or formal district court litigation. In this instance, we were able to find a location that filled this gap. So I don't know hypothetically what we would have done. We may just have noted it and come back in a year or 6 months or 8 months or something, and then attempted with different property owners to have different access negotiations.
All right. Thank you for that information. I appreciate it.
A number of people brought up health concerns, and I'm wondering how you address those and/or monitor said concerns.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. We deal with this question about radio frequency emissions frequently all over the state. I do because I'm a Michigan lawyer, but it's a national question that comes up. So the Telecommunications Act of 1996 has a provision in it. And counsel for the county alluded to it, but it's section 332C7B sub 4 of the 96 Telecommunication Act, and it prohibits municipalities or governments to support a denial on the basis of environmental effects of radio frequency emissions if the tower complies with FCC emissions guidelines. So from a practical standpoint, the question arises in many communities. People have different opinions at the public level about whether the emissions are a health concern, but Congress has mandated through the Telecommunications Act that it may not be considered as long as the equipment we're using meets FCC guidelines. And of course, we can't put equipment on a tower that doesn't meet FCC guidelines. It's prohibited by the act, it's prohibited by our license that we have to have for the tower. Obviously, the tower has to go through regulatory approval because it has to have a light at the top because it's over 200 feet for FAA regulations. The FCC has to issue a license for the tower. The equipment has to meet emissions guidelines. Some have suggested that the emissions being provided by these, the equipment, even if there were 4 or 5 carriers on this tower, would at each one be no more than what a baby monitor would be. I mean, and that's concern. I'm not trying to minimize that the public has the right to be concerned about that, but Congress has studied the issue. So, you know, it's always my position at these meetings, while we respectfully understand the concern of the public, it's been addressed in the statute.
Does the company monitor those degradations?
I don't believe that it has hundreds of thousands of towers across the country. I can't tell you that each one is monitored at every level. I can tell you that the FCC emission standards are followed with regard to Verizon's business practice as it relates to its equipment on these towers. I don't know what Verizon's or AT&T's or T-Mobile's business policies are with regard to going out to the towers to make sure that the equipment must comply with FCC emission guidelines or it can't be approved or used.
Okay. Moving on to PC 0225.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve PC-02-25, a zoning map amendment petition submitted by Vicky Grun for 2 rezonings. One for a 9.08 acres and one for a 1 acre out of a total of 10.08 acres. The proposed rezoning for the 9.08 acre parcel is from the General Agricultural District A2 to the Agricultural Residential Transition District A3. And the proposed zoning for the 1.0 acre parcel is from the General Agricultural District A2 to the Rural Residential Low Density RR. The proposed rezoning is located along Hollister Road between East Round Lake Road and East Allward Road.
Support.
Second. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion's carried.
Next is a motion to approve PC-01-25, special land use to construct a new 250-foot self-supporting tower wireless communication facility at 4737 South Hollister Road in Section 36 of Ovid Township.
Is there support?
To get on the table, I'll support it.
I missed, I didn't get that.
I say I will support it to get the motion
Okay.
in front of us.
Is there any more discussion? Gonna require a roll call vote?
Can we impose some conditions upon this motion of data being presented with respect to coverage?
They said they would provide it, but if you want that condition, I don't see a problem with it.
So we can let,
I see a problem with it. The motion has been presented to, we've been through it. I don't think as, tell us, council, can we do that?
You could ask for a friendly amendment from the person who made the motion, but there is a motion, from a Roberts Rule standpoint, there's a motion with support on the table. So unless the motion fails or there's a friendly amendment to the original motion, then we would need to proceed with a vote on the motion as presented. There.
No, I fully believe they said they'd provide it, and I think they will. But we're gonna move on to a roll call vote.
Commissioner Showers?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Hurdikamp?
Yes.
Pickus?
no.
Andrews?
No.
Hudak?
Yes.
And DeLon?
Yes.
5 ayes, 2 ayes, motion carries.
Perfect, thank you. Now we are gonna be required to take a 5-minute break. If everybody doesn't mind. Call meeting back to order. Next item on the agenda is the FOIA appeal.
Yes, sir. The county received an appeal to a FOIA response issued by the sheriff's office on March 12th, where the sheriff's office granted in part and denied in part records related, or records requested. And the records requested related to a 2011 booking and incarceration at the county jail from a inmate from Genesee County. It was during a period when the county was housing inmates from other counties. The requestor appealed the denial for the records, as noted in the draft communication reviewed by the county, discussed with the sheriff's office, and reviewed by council. The basis for the denial is that the county does not have those records. Any records that the records that were denied that may have existed were outside of the required retention period. So what has been provided is what the county records, or sheriff's office records are, and the denial was based on the county not having or maintaining the requested record.
So I guess I just need a motion to deny the appeal for the reasons stated more fully in the proposed letter.
Mr. Chair, I would make that motion, whatever it is.
Okay. Is there support?
Before you do that, what exactly is it, what we're saying? Does anybody have a motion to give to our clerk?
Yes, I believe the chairman stated tonight,
You got it?
the appeal for the reasons.
Right there. Oh,
Stated
whatever
in the
Deb writes
proposal.
down is okay with me.
Oh, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion's carried.
Thank you.
Next item is the Mid-Michigan District Health Department March newsletter. I'm not gonna read it. If anybody has any questions. Moving on. Commissioner Hurtacan, approval of the commissioner's expense accounts.
Sure, I move to approve the commissioner's expense accounts with the chair and the clerk's approval.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion's carried. Moving on to committee meeting reports. Infrastructure Committee.
That would be you, Mr. Chair.
You mean I gotta remember this just from?
You do. I realize you're getting older like me, but you know.
Okay, I'm gonna wing it. It's okay. Basically, at the Infrastructure Committee, I don't believe there was any action items whatsoever, just a large discussion in the public safety facility. Went on for a couple hours, as you all know, because you were all there.
I just add, I mean, at your request, the Infrastructure Committee met to provide background and historical information to the new committee members. Again, as you indicated, there was no action recommended or taken. And I believe a follow-up meeting was scheduled for May to continue the discussion on a potential facility.
Mr. Chair, I think it was also mentioned that commissioners should visit the jail, but for legal reasons, not because they did something bad. And
I
enjoyed,
think everybody has toured it, haven't they?
I remember the lunch there I went many years ago was a hot dog and something that resembled bread. But, glad I wasn't there permanently.
Moving on to Ways and Means.
Yes, let's see, so the Ways and Means Committee met on Tuesday, March 20th. And up for discussion and approval will be a fiduciary agreement with Ingham County. I'm not gonna go into all the details, but basically this is Clinton County's local share of the 2024 Region 1 Homeland Security Grant in the amount of $65,741.65. And I Move approving the fiscal year 2024 Homeland Security Grant Program, Region 1 Board Subrecipient Agreement authorizing Ingham County to serve as a fiduciary for the region.
Okay, we doubled up on that one.
Support both of those.
Okay,
I'll second.
there will be a roll call vote.
Rudak,
Yes.
Hurricane,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Pickus,
Yes.
Showers,
Yes.
Andrews,
Yes.
and DeLong.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays, and motion carried.
Next item up is I move to recommend approving the pre-funding of the Clinton County's local share of, well, I guess this one. Oh, this is,
You already did that.
oh,
one.
this is already done. Yep, sorry. Next up is to recommend approving up to $30,000 to the purchase of Axon Evidence Software. This is software that will be used by the prosecutor's office to view video camera via the trooper's car or body camera.
Support.
Any discussion? This will be a roll call vote.
Commissioner Showers,
Yes.
Andrews,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Pickus,
Yes.
Rudak,
Yes.
Hurricane,
Yes.
and DeLong.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays, motion carried.
Next up is to recommend approving up to $62,000 to purchase the 2025 aerial photography photographs.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Commissioner Andrews,
Yes.
Rudak,
Yes.
Pickus,
Yes.
Showers,
Yes.
Hurricane,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
and DeLong.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
I make a motion to recommend approving the decrease of committed funds in the amount of $4,536.53 from the general fund committed fund balance for the Tri-County Metro Narcotics Squad to make the fiscal year 2023-24 offset payment.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion's carried.
I make a motion to recommend increasing the telephone budget in the amount of $3,900 for all county commissioners to choose to participate in the cell phone reimbursement program.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion's carried.
Next up, I make a motion to recommend approval of the proposed revision to the Smith Hall Fairgrounds use agreement and fee schedule as presented in your packet.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's carried.
Next up is to recommend the adoption of the 2026 budget calendar. And I so move.
Support.
Anybody have any issues? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion's carried.
Next is, I make a motion to recommend approval of the April 25th open meetings and event calendar.
Support. Moved and supported. Everybody good with it?
Mr. Chair, I was, as you know, at a physician's office, so did we include in the calendar the MAC conference, April 7th through the 9th?
Yes, sir.
We did, okay. And will Penny send that to us, the calendar?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion's carried.
Let's see. Next up, I make a motion with the approval of the chair and clerk to approve the invoices paid from February 8th through March 7th, 2025 in the amount of $1,312,310.52.
That was committee. We don't need to do that.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right.
We already did
we did that, I think that's it, just the,
Okay.
oh, yep, we already did that one too, so. And that concludes.
Did we do anything in your committee?
A couple things.
Okay, because I don't have any. But you can go ahead.
Okay. First up is County Treasurer personnel request. The County Treasurer has been consistently stretching employees and utilizing overtime to be able to accomplish the statutory duties of that office. And I move to approve the addition of one deputy treasurer position to the approved position allocation list. And should I do both of these together? Okay. And included in that is to recommend approving the continuation of payment of the hourly staff differential to Ms. Andrus on a one-time documented basis through April 30th, 2025, to assist the treasurer's office with the backlog of bank reconciliations and to provide training for the chief deputy treasurer.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion's carried.
Next up is the sheriff personnel request. This will be the third of 3 approved new positions to fill, and I move to recommend approving the sheriff to place an experienced road patrol deputy candidate at the top of the road patrol pay scale as requested.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's carried.
Next is a prosecuting attorney personnel request. The prosecuting attorney has requested to hire the current intern as a part-time employee, postgraduate law clerk, while that individual prepares to study for the bar exam. This is with the intention of hiring them on once they pass that. I move to recommend the approval of the prosecuting attorney's request as presented.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's carried.
Next is a fan favorite. It's the Holiday Employee Appreciation Luncheon request. This is the amount to cover basically the appreciation lunch that comes around Christmas time. I move to authorize funding of up to $5,500 for the Clinton County Employee Appreciation Luncheon at Agro Liquid on Friday, December 19th, 2025, and to close the courthouse from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. that day for employees to attend.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion's carried.
Next are committee commission appointments. All 3 planning commission members that were up for reappointment would like to return, and those are Kim Weber, Michael O'Brien, and Jan Moats. I move to recommend reappointing Kim Weber, Michael O'Brien, and Jan Moats to the planning commission for 3-year terms expiring May 1st, 2028.
Support.
Is there any further nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion's carried.
The next appointment is for the Tri-County Aging Advisory Council. I move to appoint Larry Meyer to the Tri-County Aging Advisory Council for the remainder of a 3-year term expiring December 31st, 2027.
Support.
Is there any other nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion's carried.
Next is recognition of National Public Safety Telecommuters Week in April. I move to recommend authorizing a resolution of appreciation in honor of the Clinton County 911 Central Dispatch telecommunicators and declare the week of April 13th to 19th, 2025 to be National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in Clinton County.
Support.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion's carried.
That brings us to the closed session item. How, we don't,
Nothing
Already been
happens.
done.
we're done. That's correct.
Commissioner comments? John?
I don't have any.
Cole?
Thanks to everybody who engages in this process and communicates with us.
Mr. Showers?
Yeah, I have a proud moment. Thank you, Melanie and Rob, for this. She brought me a Spartan magazine and showed me that my middle daughter, Julie Showers, who is the marketing director for the organization in Portland, Oregon, I can't say it right, House. It's a organization that was formed just after World War II for indigent men who get fed there and taken care of. And my daughter, thank you, Melanie, for getting her in this for recognition. But the real reason is she and my wife, who is a very shy person, wrote a book about featuring a cat that she teaches kids what it's like to be homeless and without food. I'm very proud of her, and thank you, Melanie, for getting the book here in this area. So it has nothing to do with politics, but it makes me as a proud dad. So just want everybody to know that.
It's a great little book.
I say what? But yes, yeah, absolutely. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Mr. Rudat?
So, only thing on my end, I know there was a comment to the 4-H fairgrounds at the beginning of the meeting, and I just wanted to flag that there is some, I've been in conversations with some folks from the County Farm Bureau and also with John about, there's currently a project earmarked for the development of a master plan for the fairgrounds. So really looking forward to kind of diving into that a little bit deeper with both John and the facilities team and some folks from the County Farm Bureau, just to look at what we could do long-term there to make sure that's a good resource for our community. The only thing I'll add is just a thank you to the sheriff's team and the facilities team for the infrastructure committee meeting we had this month. It was very informative for me as a newbie and gave a lot of good, important context to that conversation moving forward. So that's all I have in my hand.
Yes. I'd like to thank the Planning and Zoning, Christina, for allowing and providing support for me to attend the Planning and Zoning Essential. This was some training in Frankenmuth. It was a half day. It was very informative. I feel I filled a lot of the gaps that I have serving on the Planning Commission. So it was excellent training. And that was put on by the Michigan Association of Planning. Also, just a reminder that this Saturday, March 29th, from 9 to 10 a.m. at the Dunkin' Donuts on the corner of Airport Road and Clark, not Lake Lansing, but Airport and Clark, I will be holding a quarterly coffee there from 9 to 10. And I look forward to seeing anybody that would like to come out and have a chat. And that's all I have.
Mr. Washington?
Is the coffee and donuts free? Should we all come up?
I will provide, and John, I would be more than happy to buy you a cup of coffee and donuts,
Say, how many donuts can we have?
as many as you like.
I'm bringing Charlie.
Anything further by anybody? I guess I'd just like to make a statement. Please put your expense reports in so we can get them approved and get them processed. And we're adjourned.